And welcome to In This Episode, Everybody Dies. I'm your host, Kevin Muller. With me, as always, Chad Walsh and Ben Briere. Gentlemen, how are you?
Hey, kids.
Hey, what's up?
An enthusiastic opening, as always. And, folks, this week we're going to be talking about a film we've been dying to talk about. And, of course, it took me about a month and a half to finally find that time to go see it. But we're going to be talking about Blade Runner 2049 this week. That's it. Just that one thing. So be prepared, nerds.
Nerds!
Gents, where do you want to fly to first in talking about this incredible film? There's so much to talk about. Where do we begin? Chad, Ben, you want to take it?
Well, I kind of felt like they did a really good job of both honoring the original and then a lot of throwbacks as well, like for fans, like fan service, but that like was relevant to the plot as well. Yeah,
I want to say I started off thinking, why are they doing this? I didn't want to like it at all, but I have to say it was impressive to see them just kind of really open that world from the first movie up in such a huge and new way. It was really impressive.
Yeah, I got to agree 100%. When I heard of that film being done, I was like, what? You know, I didn't not want to like it, but I think I was scared because I was like, whoever's taking that on is really got some gigantic cojones, and it really needs to be amazing. Otherwise, all the nerds on the internet are going to obliterate it in less than 3 nanoseconds. So I think I was more scared than anything for the filmmaker, the actors, all of those people, the writers, you know. And I was really psyched to see that Hampton Fancher wrote the script, and he wrote the original with David Peoples, I think his name was. So that was really refreshing to see, and then to see what it became, I was really just blown away at how great it was. Denis Villeneuve is a great director, and he did The Arrival, which was amazing. The Arrival was amazing.
Arrival was awesome.
What did he do that I also liked?
Sicario or whatever.
Sicario was excellent. I bought a copy of that. It was so good. And I didn't see Prisoners. I wanted to see it, but I haven't seen that yet. But
I saw Prisoners and didn't like it at all, but whatever. Everyone's allowed a mulligan.
Sure. Yeah, I just thought the film was great. Chad, chime in.
Yeah, I thought so too. Like, ever since kind of Force Awakens, like I've always been kind of an anti-spoiler person for myself just because I want to go in clean. Like I had a couple of experiences when I was young, specifically Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. I was in England at the time and just randomly walked into the theater and was just blown away.
Oh, and wow,
then, the original cool. Matrix, I came back from like a trip abroad, like traveling for months and months, and had no idea that it existed, and like also walked into a theater. So like I really love going in super clean and whatnot, because it just helps with the experience, I find. So like it's pain in the ass nowadays with social media staying away from stuff, but
oh my god, right?
Like I had The Force Awakens like spoiled on Instagram, and I was really pissed about it. So I excuse me, so I really try and stay away from stuff. So I went in super clean for Blade Runner, didn't know anything about it, barely knew who was in it, didn't know the director, and like really enjoyed it as a result of that. But I think I would have enjoyed it either way because they did such an awesome job executing it and throwing back. And then it wasn't just like a giant fan service movie either. Like,
oh my god, not even close.
Strictly fan service. There was so much interesting stuff in it, you know. So I think they did a really, really good job. I'll get into it a little bit more later, but like for me, it was it was like a 9 out of 10 movie, like one of the better movies pretty much ever kind of thing. And then like a couple of things happened in the film that knocked it back significantly for me, and we can get into that, but like the original Blade Runner is kind of like in the pantheon of like The Godfather and stuff, you know, like it's just like one of the top movies ever made.
If Blade Runner is not in your nerd top 5 sci-fi films of all time, I mean, you're not a nerd. I mean, let's face it. But I think...
well, some people would disagree, though. Some people think it's really slow.
Yeah.
The original, they think it's real up. And, of course, the sequel as well is kind of, you know, it's not an action-packed blazing, guns, explosions every 5 seconds kind of movie.
True,
It's,
true.
it's poignant, and it's slow, and it's quiet, and things unfold in a very kind of, on their own, and at their own pace.
It just jumped out at me. Sorry, it just jumped out at me that like the original Blade Runner to me, I recently watched just before going to this new one, just to kind of refresh the memory and have it really present. And the fact that it was made in '82 and what they were able to accomplish in '82 visually with it was so groundbreaking. It kind of reminds me of like what people would say about like the Beatles, and what the Beatles was able to do with 4 tracks, and how like the technical accomplishment was so before its time. And so like, while I totally get that, the original Blade Runner's slow and maybe people don't like slow movies and they want action, I think like what it was able to do with the technology and the CG, not CG, but like with the effects, the visual effects at the time was just so mind-blowing. And the fact that it still like holds up so well, 30 whatever years later, is just amazing to me. And I think that's what makes it one of the top movies, even if you didn't like the movie, so to speak.
Absolutely, man. I mean, this movie, just sort of playing to what you just said and what Ben was saying a second ago, like, this is a great film. Like, it's a great standalone film, and it's a great piece of art, it's great all by itself. And I'm not recalling anything right now that knocked it back for me. I really thought that this was a really amazing movie. Easily a 9 or 10 out of 10. I don't think I have a single complaint about it, but I feel that way about it. It's a film. It's a really great piece of artistic work, and it stands on its own 2 feet. If you had just released this film, it would have been great in and of itself,
Yeah, totally. I love that they were able to kind of capture the feeling of the original in terms of like, I suppose I should have expected it, but like I loved like the cars, like the spinner flying around, and you see like Pan Am logos and Atari logos and all this shit that's like doesn't exist in our universe. And it's just like, oh, it's so awesome that they kept all of that kind of alternate universe stuff alive, and it just like totally sucked you back into that headspace from back in the day.
Definitely. Yeah, it was really good. I was sort of driving at something a second ago, and I sort of lost what I was trying to get at, but I found it again. I wanted just to add in that not only is it just a film, but you were saying how groundbreaking the original was, what they were able to do with the technology that they had, and this movie, they have all of the technology at their disposal, and they have CGI and all of that stuff. So it's easier to paint a visual picture. And because of that, like, you really have to make a great story. And the writing, the story is so good. And I think that is a testament to how good this film is. You know what I mean? Because they don't have that, like, they can't crutch on like effects and visuals and all of that stuff. I mean, it's visually stunning, and he did a great job making it as visually stunning as Wiggly Scott did in the original one, So I don't know. I just wanted to throw that in there. I thought that was important. Good writing is important. And as we live in an age where it's like all of these high CG films are out, these eye candy films, like, a real story is what really makes a good movie, and when you watch, a lot of the Marvel movies, for instance, because there's so many of them and they're so full of eye candy, there's some really good stories in there and some really great acting going on as well, and that's what makes those great films.
Yeah. Well, I think like the story for me, like, I also try not to read anything about them immediately afterwards, so that I can try and like process it a little bit myself and get my own thoughts together before I read a bunch of other people's thoughts and kind of assimilate them. And I went with Emma, for those that don't know, that's my wife, to the movie back in the day, like when it first came out. And on the drive home, she isn't super into sci-fi in general per se, and like, we watched Blade Runner together, but she like fell asleep halfway through, as they do. And she didn't pick up on a lot of the subtle kind of throwbacks because she isn't really super aware of the original. So like on the drive home, the first thing that jumped out at me was that like it was a film about opposites. So like, A Force Awakens to me was like an echo of the original Star Wars, whereas Blade Runner 2049 is the opposite of Blade Runner in the sense that like, Deckard as Blade Runner falls in love with the femme fatale in the original, right. But in 2049, the femme fatale is the enemy. You know what I mean?
That's so like one level of Inception deep.
Yeah, well, I was just talking to her about it, and it seems like a really interesting thing because, like, you've got the antagonist dying at the end of the first one, and then this one, the protagonist dies at the end, and they both die with, like, something white. You know what I mean? And, like, Dr. Tyrell is benevolent creator, and then Nyander Wallace is, like, a failed creator. The guy can't make replicants bear children. You know what I mean? So he's all butthurt that he can't do what Tyrell did. So like every major plot point of the original is kind of flipped on its head.
Wow.
And it makes it a super interesting and intriguing kind of approach to the film. So I thought that was a really smart way to attack the story without like reinventing something off whole cloth.
That's deep, man.
Yeah. Like I said, Inception deep. My God, dude.
Sorry about that.
Seriously though, I think I was going to, wow, that was a really, really great thought. Yeah, you're right. And that's what makes this such a great film. And I'm not surprised that you glean that from that. I mean, I didn't pick up on it. Ben didn't either, obviously. But, Hampton Fancher wrote this story, and I was just thinking of something else to say. This is a pretty nice little nugget. Is that, the opening of the movie, I actually walked into it like just a couple of minutes late. I don't know exactly what I missed, but when he walks into the farmhouse, that was actually in his original draft for the first film.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I think is very cool. Because when I walked in and I sat down and I started watching it, and you walk into the farmhouse and there's nothing there and it's dark and it's like kind of dusty and there's just this pot on the stove and the pot is boiling. And if you watch, I have like the ultimate nerd edition of the final cut of Blade Runner, so it came with it. I don't know if you guys watched the documentary Dangerous Days, the making of Blade Runner. It's 3 hours long.
No.
It is so great to watch because it just talks about every single aspect of how that film was made. And when Hampton Fancher is talking about the script, that he talks about how in his original draft, that's what it was. You walk in, this dark, sort of dusty farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, this desolate sort of wasteland, and there's this pot boiling on the stove and this big guy. And that's exactly, I think he just took that and reused it for this film, and I'm glad he did because it was great.
Yeah, it was so good.
Yeah, it's a great scene.
I just thought that was interesting.
The casting was so awesome for what's his name too, like the dude from
Bautista.
Dude is so good. I loved it.
That guy just
so perfect.
What I don't know what he used to be, but he has become just like a really great actor. I mean, he's not Al Pacino, but I mean, he's
pulled a Rock though. He's definitely done what the Rock did.
He sort of switched genres, yeah. And he's not just a muscle bound like action guy either. Like he's definitely got some chops. So my hat.
No, he's funny as shit in the.
Oh my God,
the other
Guardians,
one.
Yeah,
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians,
is amazing.
He is.
He's so good.
Hysterically funny.
He's so good. That's one thing about this new film that I really enjoyed was that it opened the world. It opened the world up where back in the if you're going back to like the Philip K. Dick novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? You are talking about this world that's kind of underpopulated and abandoned, and you didn't really see that in the original Blade Runner. It all pretty much took place in the city. So moving out into these sort of desolate areas and opening the world up, like whereas the first movie was claustrophobic, you kind of felt claustrophobic a little bit, like you were just in that one area. You get to see these kind of different places in that world, this desolate sort of wasteland. I thought that was really cool, and I thought it did it in a way that it didn't overdo it. You know what I mean?
No.
It wasn't like,
definitely not.
It wasn't crazy. It just kind of opened things up a little bit, just kind of gave you a little bit of a wider lens to view that world through. And I thought that was really cool.
It's funny that you say that, Ben, because I really I was listening to you say that. And as I recall the book is really more like the second film than the first film, certainly in terms of locales. I mean, I remember in the book it being it opens and it's out in the wasteland. You know what I mean? It's and a lot of the locales are like that. It's not all, like you said, in the claustrophobic city. So I really think this one almost sort of draws off the original, maybe a little bit more. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, because the original Blade Runner doesn't really pull from the book terribly much. Like, there's the owl in the original movie that harkens to like the fact that the animals are the major plot point in the original book. But it's been a long time since I read the book.
It's been I think I read it in 2009, 2010, that winter. But yeah, I feel like they were almost just pulling plot points and ideas off of the book when they made the original film. This one, I think there's maybe even more of those themes from the book are in there, which I think is kind of cool.
I felt like visually too, like he kept like, I don't know whether it was only the director or whether it was the DP as well as the director, but like they kept a lid on the openness, you know, like they would have like a smog or rain or nighttime. So like the space was larger than just like a city block, but it wasn't like, you know, distant vistas and horizons. Like it kind of still kept some of the claustrophobia with some of the atmospheric stuff, which I thought was great too.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was like you're sort of saying how they were able to add claustrophobia even in an open space.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like when they went to Vegas.
Yeah, totally. How awesome was that scene when he first kind of gets out into the waste district and gets like shot down, and then he's like confronted by 100 people, and all of a sudden like orbital weaponry starts dropping, and it's just like fire again, 200 feet to the east, stop, fire. It's just like, holy shit, that's so amazing.
Yeah, that part was so amazing.
She's getting her fucking nails done by this dude, and she's just like, fire again. Just like, fuck, I love this movie.
Yeah, that was really a good scene, and the way he took all of those people down that came up after him after he crashed was pretty intense. So, you know, it was sort of exaggerated. You know, it's like a slower paced film. You know, it has that sort of Johnny Cash thing going on. It's like, what did they say about Johnny Cash? He was smooth like a something, steady like a freight train, you know, and it chugs along like that, but that it's accentuated by these high points, these little bursts of action like that. I thought that were really, really cool to see, you know, that the...
Did you guys see, what was that one, that recent war movie that takes place on the beach? Dunkirk?
No, I didn't see it.
No.
But regardless of that, like, the whole kind of film like ratchets the tension up over and over and over and over, like through various mechanisms. And like, I think just like what you're saying, where there's like little moments of like delight in the sense of like action, but there's also like little moments of humor that kind of like pop the bubble of tension. So like the movie doesn't just get more and more tense and like, oh, this is getting more serious. Like it's just like kind of that like Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings style, like little moments of ridiculousness just to kind of like pull it back down a bit. I thought they did a really good job of balancing like action and then balancing humor so that it wasn't just like one thing the whole way through.
They did a really good job of that. And it just, again, added to the overall, you know, juiciness of the experience, you know. Do you guys want to talk about, can we talk about the sound for a second?
Totally.
Sure.
Or a minute or whatever. I really was, you know, in the sort of the back of my head, or one part of my head was trying to log and really pay attention to the sound that was going on while that film was playing. And I really think, I mean, we're starting to sound like a bunch of total fanboys here, but the sound was perfect in that movie. The music was, you know, it had that like sort of somewhat of an homage to Vangelis, but it had its own flavor, and it was beautiful in the way he used negative space in the music, you know, like not having music or just going very minimal, and using, you know, just a couple of simple instruments in certain parts, or keeping it very low in certain parts. And it really just accentuated the action in the film, whether it was fast or slow, perfectly, I thought. I couldn't get it. Yeah, I couldn't get enough of it. And then when I would sort of like really notice the sound or the music, And I'm talking about both the sound and the music, because the sound was great too in terms of sound effects and all of that stuff. But when I really, really noticed the music, I was just like, wow, that's really great. You know, really, really did a good job with it.
I can't wait until I can until I can watch this again because I'm going to be honest, as a musician, I didn't. It was probably a good thing that I didn't really notice the music.
I think that's probably the best compliment, like you said, that a musician can give to a film, though, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes a film score can be just, you know, like it gets stuck in your head and you really love it. But sometimes it just drives the movie, and it's there, sort of in the background as a part of the entire experience. And I want to go with saying that's what it must have been for me, because God, I want to watch it again now because I and pay attention to that aspect, because I didn't pay attention to that aspect. It just was there, you know? So I imagine that it must be really good if I can't even think about it at this point. Like I have no recollection. I have no recollection of the music at all.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, man. And I'm sort of, you know, playing into what Ben was saying. Like, there's so much happening in a film like that where it's that good, and the quality of the film all the way around is so good. There's so many great things happening. You can't possibly absorb all of it. You know, I mean, of course, your mind is recording every single minute detail, but what you're actually able to focus on with your conscious mind is, you know, only certain things, the story, the acting that's right in front of you, whatever. And so, like Ben says, it's like, you know, you might even miss the whole thing. You know, you wouldn't have noticed the soundtrack unless it was bad, you know, or something like that. So, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. It probably sounds like you know, taking a nasty dig at whoever did the film score, and I'm not prepared, and I don't know who did it, but that's not the case at all.
No, I get totally what you're saying.
I'm sure it was really good, but it's just strange that I don't remember it.
Yeah.
So
no, I don't think that's strange. I think that's in some ways like a really good compliment towards the film. And it was Hans Zimmer that did the soundtrack. He did this. He did with the score with a guy named, I want to say, Johan Johansson, and they did it as a collaboration. There was
I wrote it down. The dude's like Benjamin Wallfish or something, so similar to a Johan Johansson.
Okay, yeah, really similar to Johan. I was gonna say that sounds like Johan, but yeah, he it was a collaboration. They actually had somebody that came in to do the music on it, and then he wanted to
some rapper or something.
I think you're right, but whoever it was, he ultimately, I think the director decided that he wanted to go sort of back to something more along the lines of what Vangelis had done in the original, and that's why they pulled in Hans Zimmer and this Benjamin Johansson guy.
I'm glad that they did, though, because like similar to the fact that it was going to be really hard to maybe not top the original, but even come close to equaling the original film, it was also going to be really hard to top or equal the original soundtrack. Like, the fact that they were able to do both reasonably well, I think, is testament to the overall film. And if it was like some weird, like, you know, Will Smith style freaking Wild Wild West soundtrack, it would have totally just knocked it down like 4 notches. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
My God, how could you even suggest something like that? My God.
I don't want to go on about the soundtrack forever, though, but it's odd that I don't have any recollection, because the soundtrack from the first film was really like it's really a huge part of it for me, you know, like. It was, and I think it was a huge part of the movie, really. So, fuck, man, God, I got to see it again, because, I mean, I saw this, right when it came out, more or less. So, and then I think Chad, you saw it probably like,
yeah, I saw it within a few days of it coming out, and then I went and saw it again, maybe 2 or 3 weeks after that in the theater, and then. A version of it fell off of a truck, and I watched it yesterday just to refresh.
Oh my
but it was
God!
A terrible version.
Wow, those trucks, man! I'll tell you, was it like one of those?
It was lucky. I was just standing there, and it's like Spanish version with 20 minutes of the movie cut out of it fell off the back of the truck, and I was
Was
like,
it
I'll watch that.
was the truck like was it one of those Australian road trains, that deliver, like those
Yeah, with a pirate
those
driving
triple
it.
stacked 18-wheelers that deliver stuff like
It's just like kangaroo carcasses all over the front of it.
Exactly.
It was kind of like Mad Max, the most recent Mad Max. Everyone was painted silver. It was great.
Fury Road, yeah.
Wow. Was the guy like driving the truck like with his head out the window, like just spraying chrome paint onto his mouth? Like,
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, he's all fueled up.
waiting to get into Valhalla.
On I would love to talk about Joy a bit, the holographic girlfriend.
Oh yes. Dude, go. Let's talk about that.
I thought it was like from like a filmmaking direction, or like, I don't know what you would call it, cinematography perspective. I love that they like must have shot it separate where they weren't touching. So like the actors never really touch and there's no interface, and they're always like off a little bit when they try and kind of interact, Kay and Joy. I thought that like really makes it super, I don't know, it just added so much depth to the interactions and the relationship. I thought that was super cool. And like, I like how her introduction, she's like spinning around and changing costumes and like acting all weird, and it like really establishes it quickly without there needing to be like a voiceover of like explaining what's happening or whatever.
Yes.
right. Yeah. You're confused for a moment and then you get it. You're like, oh, okay. She's a projection.
And then like at one point she's like, there's like some like jazz song on, and she's like, did you know this was like such and such records in 1927 and was #1 on the Billboard charts? And you're like, yeah, thanks Siri, shut the fuck up. It's so funny.
Yeah, that was
It's like those like subtle little tweaks.
what was funny about that part was that character really, I was very dismissive of it at first. I was like, oh, this is just some sort of like, eye candy that sort of fills out and fleshes out the world that they live in. But, it's like, it was interesting how they developed that character from what is seemingly just a simple, like, entertainment hologram into a very integral part of the story. Even to the point where he clearly, has this, it's tough to say emotional. I mean, because, do replicants feel things for real or not? But, he clearly has this emotional connection to her, and it's evident, towards the end when she ultimately perishes,
Yeah.
What I wanted to talk kind of touch on was, and I could be really foggy here, but I want to say, there's a point later in the movie where he sort of re-encounters the, I don't know if it's an advertisement for
Yeah. The giant billboard advertisement.
Joy, and he kind of seems like, it seems to me like he's feeling like the whole thing was just sort of like a cosmic joke, like he was absolutely really in love with her, but then he encounters the advertisement, and he sort of, is that a thing, or am I just imagining that?
Yeah, no, totally. Because at one point when it's kind of like, is he the chosen one kind of thing, she's like, you are important, you are a real boy, and you need to have a real name like Joe. And she's like, you're Joe. And he's like, stop saying that. And then he runs into the giant billboard after she gets killed or whatever. And he comes down, he's like, you're a real good Joe, Yeah, totally. Yeah, makes it, you question whether it's a legit thing or not. Totally.
Yeah.
Well, it was kind of like it kind of feels like it's a potential theme through the film, regardless of specific characters. But in relation to Joy, is Joy just an AI that's really good at simulating a relationship with whoever the owner is, in this case Kay, or is it a real thing? Like, does she, because like he's the quote unquote chosen one and all this shit's going down, like, is she actually getting feelings for him as an AI, or is it just a really good simulation? And I think that last little point that you made, Ben, is like, seems like the director trying to pose that question.
Sure. And I mean, really, what's the difference?
Right. Fair enough.
If she's really good at simulating caring about somebody, and you feel cared for, or they're sacrificing themselves for someone, What's the difference?
And I think that that's great because like the same thing can be said about replicants versus humans, whereas like replicants are second class citizens and they're like, fuck you, skin job in the movie and like super racist and stuff or whatever term you would use. But if they're able to bear children in this film, then what is the difference? Is there a soul? Is there no soul? So like it kind of is like another layer to that, you know, where like to a human, a replicant is subhuman and it's not it's an object. It's a thing, not a person. And then I just really liked how like the prostitute replicant at one point when she's talking to Kay like at that like cafe and like the chime from Joy's little like, you know, mobile phone thing goes off and he's like, "Oh, you don't like real girls, do you?" You know? And so like the replicants consider Joy like a third class citizen. So it's interesting that like the replicants kind of adopt the racist attitudes of the humans by like looking down on Joy as a hologram, you know? But like you said, what's the difference?
Yeah, what is the difference? Here's what I'll say about that. It's regardless of whether she is or isn't, her relationship with Kay elicited an emotional response in me, not to sound like super voight comfy here, but whatever. No, it's exactly how I felt. Like I was feeling that, you know what I mean? I was watching it and I was like, she like loves him. Like I couldn't stop thinking that, you know what I mean? I was like, she loves him and he has this like affinity for her as well. And it was palpable, man. I could feel it. It was something. It was a part of the dynamic in the story. Take it or leave it, man. You know, maybe people will think that that's totally cornball, but I was totally feeling that. So I mean, and yes, I think it absolutely adds another layer to the story. It's like, what is real?
I don't think it is cornball. I think it's, you know, what is reality but what you perceive it to be anyways, you know? I mean, as a human being, like, you know, what you perceive to be real is real. I mean, of course, you know, it could get confusing with something like that, but honestly, I mean, you know, the question of does she love him or is it just a simulation of loving him? Well, I don't know. What's the difference? You know, what would be the difference between a perfectly simulated reality and real reality? Would you be able to tell the difference? Of course not. So
I can't say that I could. Yeah.
So
I can't say that I would.
Yeah. I mean, that's a deep seated sort of concept in the Blade Runner movies, right? Is you know, what is it to be human, and you know, what actually is reality, and you know, sort of bending and playing with that idea. So I think it's a great addition to the franchise.
Yeah, totally. And then like you get like Kay's interaction with the police chief who he calls Madam, which I think is a great touch, but like same kind of thing where she basically is like, you need to go kill the child and da 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 da, and he's like, I didn't know I could, and he's like hesitates and he's like, I've never killed anything that was born before. And she's like, are you saying no? And he's like, oh, I didn't think that was an option. He's like, good boy, you know? And then he's like concerned about having a soul, and she's like, you've been doing just fine without one. He's like, without what? Without a soul, you know? Like it totally plays on that original Blade Runner.
And I have to point out too quickly that the chief was played by Robin Wright Penn, who just, God, she pops up everywhere. Small role, large role. She just slays it, man. She can just chew scenery. I mean, she's so good in House of Cards. I don't know if you guys have seen that on Netflix, but that's a great show. She was in Wonder Woman in a supporting role as like the warrior trainer. I mean, she was great, and she was great in this too.
She did an awesome job. There's one scene in this Blade Runner film with her and him that I thought was so great, that kind of like touches on how replicants are treated like objects and like second class citizens, where like she asks him to share a memory and he's like, oh, I don't know. And she's like, well, it's an order, you know? He's like, okay. And he shares that. The first time he shares that like wooden horse in the factory being chased memory. And so he's telling this memory, and like she's like drinking his booze, and he comes out of the flashback memory, and she's kind of like a little bit starry-eyed and like, oh, that was really sweet, and then kind of like insinuates that she wants to bang. And she's like, oh, what happens if I finish this bottle? And he's just kind of like, shouldn't you be getting back to work? And she's like, yeah, right. So like she perceived him as like a sexual object as opposed to like, you know, an interaction between two equals. And I thought that was really interesting.
Wow. I did not pick that up at all. So you were just, oh my God. Wow. Okay. Yeah, no, I didn't get that. I wasn't picking up any sexual vibe in that scene, but yeah, you're probably right. I'm thinking about it right now. That was, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Have to watch it again.
Man, you're yeah, I know. Me too. God, we didn't all.
It's just the little hints. Like, it's only because I watched it yesterday for like the third time. You know?
Well, yeah, it's only because you had a van drive by yesterday and just a random copy of the film just dropped out onto the street. I mean, we don't all have those vans just driving by our house, man.
It's just, yeah, dumb luck.
You know, but you're supposed to turn. I don't know how laws work in Australia, buddy, but you're supposed to turn that copy.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I mailed that shit in. No worries.
I'm sure you did. Right.
Be a good citizen and all.
I just wanted to check that it was a legitimate copy before I mailed it. I didn't want to waste anybody's time, you know?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. Of course. And then once you start, you know, how can you stop?
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't want to you wanted to make sure there was no malfeasance.
And how about the Joy death where like the antagonist femme fatale Love, Niander Wallace's kind of right-hand person. So like the first time that she and Kay interact in the office is interesting, and towards the end, like the Joy little wand thing chimes, and she's like, "Oh, I hope you like our product." And then at the end, like she like smashes it with her foot, and then circles back and says it again. You know, says like, "I really hope you're satisfied with our product," and then just like crushes her. You know, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, she was a great character too. Really, this whole film was populated by excellent actors. Yeah, that was a great part. And again, I was really crushed when Joy died.
Like in the process of saying I love you, she's literally like crushed out of existence, and then like a knife to the side, she's just kind of like, I hope you like our product. You're like, oh man, that's cold, man.
Right, but not only that, she's saying it in the process of saying I love you. She's being crushed by somebody named Love,
who then says, like, in the coldest way possible, that you're just a product. It's just like so many layers of like, holy shit.
Yeah. How many layers of holy shit is that, folks? Can you count the layers?
Quite a few.
Yeah, I mean, you know, naming those characters Joy and Love are I don't think they're happenstance.
No. Oh, it's so good.
Just to add those onion layers to that whole thing, you know.
And I enjoyed so much how Love is like the coldest kind of character, like has so little emotion, and it gets like really angry and like, you know, acts really aggressive when Wallace isn't around, but when Wallace is around, she's like really like closed in and stuff. But then like the scene like where she kills the police chief or whatever, when she kills Madam, she's got like tears rolling down her cheek as she screams. Like she's so sad that she has to kill, you know? It's just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's a stone cold killer bitch, man, too, in that, you know what I mean? Like really stone cold.
And she's definitely like a soldier to Wallace, you know? Like Wallace is such a, I don't know. He's like, it's really interesting that they chose Jared Leto as well, because I don't know if any of this is true or not. I haven't really looked into it, but my understanding is Leto is quite a fucked up person in real life in terms of how he treats women, and like could potentially be like one of the people that are being discussed. You know, like it wouldn't surprise me if it jumps out like sexual misconduct and stuff. And so like to have him as like the ultimate person who objectifies and treats humans and women like shit, like I think was maybe not an intentional casting, but it adds like some reality to it. And he's such like an aggressive and vicious and kind of evil and egotistical kind of like tech titan. And his minion is this female android Love that like is like the soldier, is like the muscle. I thought was really well crafted in terms of characters.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, all of the characters were really well fleshed out. You know, and like I said a second ago, the acting was superb. Chad, what you had? Did you have another little nugget that we were talking about in the green room in our pre-show warm-up? I can't remember. What was that?
Yeah. It might be worth getting into some of the stuff that we didn't like about the film or whatever, but there were two scenes that I didn't like, and we can get back to in terms of chronology. But one scene that I wasn't sure if I liked the first time I saw it was the scene where Rachel comes back and like confronts old Deckard as like a temptation.
Yeah.
And the reason I wasn't sure if I liked it or not is because it immediately followed a scene that I really didn't like that we can circle back to, like the thing that knocked the movie down a couple of pegs. The movie was a 9 out of 10 for me. I wasn't willing to give it a 10 out of 10 just because like I feel like a 10 out of 10 is reserved for like the best films of all time kind of thing. Like it's really has to be special. And I don't think that there's anything that this movie could ever have done to equal the original. Like it would always be like 1 millimeter less at the absolute best. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. Yeah, I agree with that. Yep. So absolutely.
By that rationale, the best it could ever achieve, according to me, is a 9 out of 10. And it was a 9 out of 10 for Act 1. It was a 9 out of 10 for Act 2. And the transition from Act 2 to Act 3, it dropped significantly for me with 5 words.
Wow.
And those 5 words were, "and we're building an army." When he's in that like wet space and that like Frieza woman, the like woman that helped birth the baby, comes and she's like, "A revolution is coming and I want to free our people," and all that kind of stuff. And then she says, "and we're building an army." It just like, for whatever reason, the way that it was, the scene was shot, and it just pulled me right out of the film. It just like shattered the illusion of the entire film and all of what it had worked to build up for me, and pulled me out. And I was like, what the fuck?
Wow.
God damn it. Why did you do that? Why did you say that? And it took me like 15 minutes after that to kind of get back into the film, but I was so like upset with how it like was super obvious that it just completely screwed with my ability to process the film at that point. And when I went back the second time and watched it a second time, I really wanted to pay attention to see like whether it really did knock it back a bunch for me, or whether I just had a weird reaction because it surprised me so much the first time. And the second time I watched the film, I recognized that it wasn't as bad as I had originally thought.
Okay.
But like, it was amazing to me that like just 5 words could like shatter the illusion so much for me. And if like that, literally that 2 seconds was cut out in like a fan edit, and when the DVD comes out, it would be a 9 or a 9.5 out of 10 still.
Wow.
So I don't know why, but it just really rubbed me the wrong way. And then the immediate scene following that was the one with Rachel. So I was confused as to whether it was my residue of being upset or whether that scene bothered me.
But why? What? But I want to hear a deeper explanation for why those 5 words bummed you out so much.
Yeah. So the scene is K, who's now known as Joe, being told he's not the chosen one, which is like, was great. It was a great little subtle twist, and like it totally turned the hero's journey on its head. And you're like, oh wow, okay, that's interesting. And I suppose it's not like, you know, I see dead people like twist, like it isn't like earth shattering, but it was a nice little subtle twist. And it bothers me sometimes in films when something is over explained. And so like, they took a situation where there's a group of actors, they're talking, and it's a group of the quote-unquote resistance, basically saying, like, we're trying to protect this lost child, and you're not that lost child. And we all thought we were that lost child, too, because we all share the memories, and that's okay. But we need a reason, you know, it's okay to not be the chosen one because we all need a reason that's good enough to die for. And, like, that was the purpose of the scene, and everything around those 5 words communicated that. But when she says, and we're building an army, it's like, well, no shit, you're building a fucking army. No shit, you're trying to resist. Like, don't beat me over the head with the super obvious stuff. And like, and we're building an army is kind of like, it's smacked of like a studio exec coming in and being like, we need to sprinkle in a little bit of like hinting at a sequel here, or like, we're going to make another movie. And I don't know if that was the purpose or not, but it just like, it's smacked of that.
That's what I was going to say. That's totally what the purpose was. I think that's absolutely what the purpose was. It's just a little like shitborn sort of Easter egg about like, yeah, the next one's going to be Blade Runner 2055, Revenge of the Replicants. you know.
Oh my God, that would be awful.
Absolutely. And maybe it's like PTSD from Matrix Revelation or whatever, where like the whole, you know, like the original Matrix comes out and you're like, wow, that's great. And then the second and third one come out like however many years later and you're so pumped. And then it's like the most disappointing pile of shit in the face of the earth. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need you to beat me over the head with, and we're building an army. And when I watched it the first time, I thought that the whole scene bothered me, but it turns out when I watched it the second time, it was just one fucking sentence.
Yeah.
That if it had been removed, could have like kept the film at like a 10 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. And one, I found it interesting that a 2-second thing can destroy a movie. And two, I found it interesting that it was a 2-second thing and it wasn't like the whole scene. So I was really conscious to find out what could be cut out in that second viewing to try and remove it. But does that explain a little bit of why that bit frustrated me?
It completely explains it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I just wanted, I just wanted you to. I get it, you know, like I'm with you there, but I just felt asking the question would clarify it for listeners.
And and just for the sake of like a little bit more specifics, the actual line in the film, because I watched it like while I was eating breakfast this morning to try and figure out exactly what it was like. She tells the whole thing, you're not the chosen one. And then she says, a revolution is coming, pause, and we're building an army, pause. I want to free our people, and we need a reason to die or whatever. And it's just like, those are the exact words, and those 5 words could be cut out of the middle, and it would have just been, a revolution is coming, and I want to free our people. And it would have been like, yeah, cool. Yep, I'm in. But instead, just that one little bit, you know, and it was just really interesting.
Okay, wow.
So I don't mean to get super angry and have a rant about it, but like it was just... It really knocked it back for me.
No, that's good.
So then to go back to the original kind of thought was one of the following scenes in the next couple of minutes, which basically starts the third act of the film, is he's not the chosen one, da 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 da, and then it goes to Deckard being a captive in Wallace's lair and being tempted by Rachel. And so like I think that as a plot device, that's really interesting. But similar to the use of Princess Leia digitally in whatchamacallit, what was the more recent Star Wars?
Rogue One.
Rogue One, yeah. So like, just like in Rogue One, you walk into the room at the end of the film and it's the back of Princess Leia as a young woman and you're like, yes! And then it goes to her face and you're like, no! I just feel like
and she
the
says,
CGI,
hope.
that uncanny valley just isn't there. And I didn't think it was necessary for Rachel to have, you know, any speaking lines where you're looking at her face in this film. Like it could have been done just as well from the side or obscured slightly so it wasn't such an uncanny valley moment.
I agree.
And that kind of bothered me a little bit too, but it directly followed the shitty we're building an army scene.
Yeah, I mean for something that sort of you know, powerful and dramatic, I think that's, you know, kind of a shitty use of that. You know, like in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where they do like young Kurt Russell at the beginning, like that's fine. You know, like no big deal. And, you know, in Rogue One, yeah, I totally get it. Could have just shown the back of her head. Didn't have to, you know, do that. But yeah, in this particular case, I'll agree with you. I think it's, I mean, it's really fucking close, but still.
It's still just that uncanny valley thing. It's just not quite there.
It's not quite there. It's really close, though.
It was very close.
Shit.
I don't know, man. When she walked up, I was like, what is going on here? I was like, she does not look, I knew exactly what they were trying to do. I knew they were Rogue One-ing that shit. And I was like, she does not look like Sean Young. I'm sorry. She just didn't. And it didn't. And okay, so earlier in the episode, we talked about, you know, what makes it a 9. I said, I can't remember anything that really made me think that this is a bad movie, but you just made me remember the one thing that I wasn't crazy about, and it was that.
It's just a little thing, but yeah.
Well, it was a big thing because you're talking about like, it's a major plot point, and, you know, having her, you know, sort of resurrected through, you know, this Rogue One facial mapping shit, whatever the hell you want to call it. I don't know. I wasn't digging it. I thought the Carrie Fisher one was solid. Like, that one looked like Carrie Fisher. I mean, this one did not look like Sean Young at all. And I'm not trying to bash on the actress that did it. That's a tough role to take, but I wasn't feeling it. I appreciated what they were trying to do in the scene, but I didn't think it worked as well as they wanted it to.
Yeah, but I got to see it again.
I think it's clear that the director felt that it was worth the risk to tell the specific part of that scene. And like, who knows? I think any one of us might have made the same decision of like, fuck it. It's so important to tell the story in this particular way that it's worth that risk.
Right.
Whereas it wasn't worth the risk in Rogue One for me. Just for it, in Rogue One, it was literally fan service of like her like giving a bit of a wink to the camera and you being like, "Yay, childhood!" Whereas this is like actually was a bit of a legitimate plot device, especially where like Deckard's like her eyes were green and then Love immediately shoots her in the fucking side of the head. Like it was a powerful scene. There's one thing in the scene prior to her being introduced and all the CGI that. Circling back to what you were asking originally, the second question I had in the green room was Wallace says to him, basically like, Wallace says to Deckard, like, do you think you were really in love with her, or was this all just a setup by Tyrell for you to impregnate her? Like, so similar to is Joy an AI that's simulating, or is it real? Was Rachel sent by Tyrell to seduce Deckard and impregnate her, or was their relationship real? And I suppose, Ben, the same answer you gave is probably applicable, but I'm just curious your guys' thoughts on that one.
Yeah, well, I'm going to answer your question with a question. Is Deckard a simulant?
Yeah. I thought that it was clear in this one that they took the final cut of him being a replicant. But the more I think about it, the more I realize they left it intentionally somewhat vague in this one as well, which I kind of enjoyed.
Yeah, they left it vague.
Yes.
They didn't answer the question, I don't think.
I didn't pick that up until recently, but I like that it's vague.
Here's another question. Does it matter?
Yeah. I think it matters.
Like, does it really matter whether he's a replicant or not? I mean,
I think the reason why people freak out so much about the first movie and the multiple cuts about whether he's a replicant or not matters because, let's be honest, everyone that's whinging about it is a dude, and they're all identifying with Deckard, you know? So like,
right,
you know, as a young man or a boy watching this, you identify with the hero, and you don't want the hero to be fake, I guess. So like, that's, I think, why there's a lot of people getting grumpy about it. But if you remove all that immature bullshit, like, you're right, it doesn't matter.
No. Well, I mean, good Lord, I don't want to like shatter anybody's brain here, but you know, tomorrow our creators could come forward and say, yeah, you're a replicant, all of your memories are fake. You were made last Thursday, you know, like,
right.
Like,
yeah, that's true.
You wouldn't know the difference, you know? So I've always kind of been like on the side of the replicants. I don't feel like they're second rate citizens. They're just like, I mean, they literally are people. I mean, they're not robots. They're
biological.
Yeah, they're biological. They're clones or, you know, whatever. But
they're biobots.
Yeah, they're biologically human. They're just created and implanted with memories. That's really the only difference between them and us. So, you know, I just want to say it doesn't really matter to me because they could tell me the same thing tomorrow and I wouldn't have known that it was, you know, that it was all false. I would feel like it was just as real.
Yeah.
But in the first film, like, it's particularly cruel when Deckard tells Sean Young, Rachel, that like her spider memory is fake, and you know, she gets upset and like cries when she realizes that she's a replicant. You know, like it's a quite a vicious thing that he does to her.
Totally.
Yeah. The whole one thing about that first movie that kind of rubs me the wrong way is the relationship between Deckard and Rachel.
Well, the fact that he rapes her is pretty much a thing.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, that the I don't know if I want to call it rape, but kind of, yeah. I mean,
it's pseudo rapey. How's that sound?
Yeah, it's rapey. It's weird, you know. Where he yeah, absolutely. I don't need to. Everybody's seen the movie, I hope, so I don't have to go back into it. But yeah, just in general, the relationship
Yeah.
is a bit strange. It's a bit off-putting. I mean, I get it. It's kind of harkening back to those, that sort of like, film noir detective story kind of thing,
Yeah.
like, but still, it's a bit off-putting.
Wow.
Kev, I interrupted you a minute ago. What were you going to chime in there?
Me? You know what? The only thing I was going to say to what you just said is I'm like listening to you, and I'm not going to comment because Ben pretty much said it all, and you pretty much said it all.
I got one more mind blower for you then.
That's going to literally kill me, so you can't do that.
No, I got one. This isn't mine. This is something I think I heard or read. But
All right, go ahead.
Neander Wallace, the tech titan, right? So he's the scene where he has that replicant in the room with Love, and he like slices her womb open, and he has that big like monologue.
Oh, that's so creepy. Yeah.
But somebody wrote something about it where it was kind of talking about how he like viciously slices this newborn replicant because he can't create. So he hasn't been able to create new life, so to speak, or be a creator, whereas Tyrell obviously was able to successfully be a creator by creating Rachel, who gave birth. And he's talking about how, I wrote it down somewhere, the space between the stars. And he's talking about like the barren, just give me a second so I can find this damn thing.
My God, I wish somebody would drive around in a van in my neighborhood so I could pick up a copy of this movie. That's what I want, because like he's like literally checking the film right now, and we're just, and Ben watched it a month ago. More than that. I just watched it like a week ago, and I'm still like I don't even remember anything.
Here it is. So I found that bit.
Right,
so Wallace is standing there with a scalpel in his face, being a creeper with his cataracts, and he says like, that barren pasture, empty and salted, the dead space between the stars. And then he talks about how no matter how many replicants that his company makes, they can't make enough to like populate the stars, because it's just literally not possible to manufacture them. So if he can become a creator, if he can find a way for them to be able to replicate and give birth, then he will literally be like the Johnny Appleseed of the universe. And he currently is so like proud of the fact that he's been able to like populate 9 planets, but he wants to be like, he almost like has like that God complex where he wants to be a creator on the scale of like a god, but he can't do it. And he just like slices this woman open just through the sheer anger that he hasn't been able to solve the problem that was already solved by the guy that's dead, Tyrell. And I just thought that was a really interesting kind of like meta theme to the whole thing, where like this egotistical dickhead is just trying to do things for his own ego, and as a result sets in motion all of this crazy shit.
Fair enough. But I think that but look, as soon as if they are able to replicate, and he sends them out, to populate these planets, and they start replicating, and by that procreating, they're really no longer replicants, man. They're
Absolutely.
just humans.
Correct.
I mean, it's almost a non-issue, because they immediately change classification once they start doing that, and then
they become more human than
human. They're just like us.
More human than human, Chad.
Yeah, great album.
That's what they say.
That is our motto here. More human than human.
Well, that's where it comes from, though. The statement "more human than human" comes from Blade Runner.
Wait, what? Is that true?
Yeah.
Was that Roy?
No, it was Tyrell.
It's Tyrell, yeah.
Okay.
And if you can tell me the actor's name that played Tyrell, I'll give you $1.
Not without IMDb.
Bonus
bro.
$1.
It's not Roy Scheider.
No. It could be his strange older brother, but
Yeah, it kind of looked like Roy Scheider there, right?
he does. He was still alive when the final cut came out.
What'd you guys think of like Future Vegas and kind of the last 20-30 minutes of the film?
I thought that, again, opening up of the world, and still keeping it claustrophobic. There's like massive sandstorms going on, so you can't really see anything. But I like that part. I thought it was cool.
That like Elvis-y hologram scene was quite good.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's like, I like this song. Like punching the shit out of each other. He's like, I like this song. And they stop. He's like, you want to get a drink?
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, no, I quite enjoyed that section of the movie. Yeah. So Chad, maybe you can help me out here. The character that actually turns out to be Decker's kid. That's the girl that's in the bubble. What was the character's name? I can't remember.
I'll look it up. It was like Doctor something.
Do we ever know?
Look it up on your database. I want to say Dr. Celine or something like that.
Yeah, it was Celine. Yeah,
Celine. Okay, Celine. Anyways, I wanted to be
Stelline, Dr. Anna Stelline.
I wanted to be on point there, but I wasn't, and I'm still not. I saw that coming.
Did you?
Yeah,
I think it's funny to me that it's funny. It's too bad I didn't get that first comment on tape. I walked away from the mic for a second, but yeah, I'm sort of disintegrating. My world is disintegrating very much like Roy Batty's did in the original Blade Runner.
You need to like rip a shirt off in the rain with a bird.
Talk about ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So wait, Ben was saying he called the freaking movie, man. He saw that the Stelline woman was the daughter. When did you pick that up, Ben? This cannot be let go.
I just had a feeling. I just had a feeling that like the memory spinner in the bubble, like I was like, why would she pop up?
Wow.
You know?
That's impressive.
That's good, man. That's good.
I
did not get that.
I mean, I don't want to say that I called it when it happened, but you know, I didn't call it when she was introduced in the movie per se, but something popped. Like I was like, what? Why is this? Why are we talking to this character? This is.
I had Chad. This is what I can't stand about Ben. He will figure something out like that, like in the first third of the film, and then I won't get it until I watched it 5 times. You know what I mean? Dude?
I can't say I figured it out, but I can only say that I wasn't surprised.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's why I had that weird feeling when this character showed up. Yeah, I don't know why. It just. I mean, I can't even remember what the reason was that we, as watchers, were introduced to her in whatever the second act or whatever. I don't know.
I love it, and then I loved Kay being like, "Yep, go meet your daughter," and then just like lying down in the snow and dying, like straight up callback to Roy Batty, and how like Deckard stops the uprising in the first movie, and Kay starts the uprising in the second movie. This is so perfect.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I kind of loathe the idea of another Blade Runner movie, but during this conversation, we've talked about, you know, the universe at large and the planets out there being populated, and that is part of the story that we've never seen before, and I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, as a total standalone, it'd be awesome.
You know, there was an interview I saw with Ridley Scott where he said that originally, back in 1982, they had planned to do prequels and sequels and all kinds of things with the first film. So I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, that might be an interesting way to take it, right? I'm going to call it right now. That's what I hope they do.
I like it. Gentlemen, it's been a fabulous conversation. I think that's a great place to close.
Yeah.
Can I go now?
Kevin, you can go. Listeners out there,
just like love, Kevin, you've got like tears rolling down your cheek right now.
Yeah, should I do? I am. I'm like exactly. I feel more like JF Sebastian though. As we've been saying here for the last 5 minutes, folks, that's going to be. I want to say that's all for today, but really, I just want to say thanks to Chad and Ben. That was really great. Great topic. Great film. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. Boys.
Yeah. Thank you, Chad and Kev.
Good night, folks.
Thanks, guys. Great talk.
Ciao.
And that's going to wrap up this week's episode. If you want to find links to the stuff we spoke about today, you can find them in the show notes in your podcast app of choice or at the website ebd.fm/1. If you have any thoughts on the show or an idea for a topic, hit us up on Twitter at ebdpod. You can find me at Molverine on Twitter. That's MOHLVERINV. Chad is at ChadNormal on Twitter. And Ben is at Jarhigo on Twitter. That's JARHEEGO. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time, folks.